to join in, give a chance to watch the replay. And I hope everybody's prepared to have a nice holiday break here. I know I'm having a good one already here at the Turner household, so I hope the same is true for all of you. All right, let me go ahead and get started. And there are people still sort of filtering in, so hopefully I'll catch them and get them um, admitted in to the meeting as they arrive. So let me share my screen over here. Okay, I think everybody can see the slide at this point. I'm oh, more people still joining into the meeting, so let me like make sure they're in. Okay, so evening, everyone, and welcome to the first session of what we call apprentice training to officiate wrestling, starting with the spring middle school season that's coming up. So we want to make sure that those that want to have a chance to officiate can get some actual real world experience after the high school season ends, as well as make some money. So let me run you through how this works, okay? And the goal of this session is to be able to give you enough information so that if you're considering officiating, that you can make an informed decision that either A, you definitely want to move forward with it and you'll join the rest of the training that we have, or B, that you decide maybe that, and I don't know if I have time to do that, or I don't know if I like that, or that's for me, or whatever. And if that's true for you, that's fine. Like, this isn't necessarily for everybody. So don't worry if you make a decision that you don't care to pursue this. So tonight's session should give you hopefully enough information so that you can make that informed decision one way or the other. Okay. All right. So let me get back to my presentation here. So our agenda tonight, I'll do a quick intro of myself so you know who I am and why I'm training you. We'll talk about the role of the official. We will talk about some organizations that you will deal with and have to be familiar with. Talk about how you get assignments. So when you get assignments to officiate events, I'll talk about how that works. Talk about the pay. That's probably the most important part for a lot of people. You'll learn how much you get paid for doing this. Talk about uniform requirements. Talk to you about the rules books that you would get issued if you do this and how you use them. Then there's some principles for officiating I want to share with you, and then we'll do a recap and Q&A at the end. Okay, so that's what we'll work on here as we go through this meeting now. All right. So first, meet me. Some of you on the call have already officiated last spring, so they're familiar with who I am. Those that are new, I'm Bob Turner. I am the president and the also the assigner for the Pacific Northwest Wrestling Officials Association, PNWOA. So when you see that acronym PNWOA, that's what that stands for. And so in my role, I've been officiating now for 35 years, and I've been in this role as the assigner, who is the one in charge of, putting officials on mats for the last 15 years. So this is a picture of me actually back when I was your age. So I'm I am your 101-pound state champion from 1979 in the 3A classification. So that's young Bob Turner up there on that particular podium. And then this is actually a picture of me in college. So and this is kind of a fascinating picture that I share with people because I'm over there in sixth place. This is the EIWA tournament, which was our conference tournament that qualified us into the NCAA tournament. But the two guys that are at the top of the podium there, Flow Wrestling, just a year or so ago, did a thing where they ranked the top 100 wrestlers of all time. So, out of the millions of people that have wrestled in the United States, they picked a 100. These two guys at the top of the podium, number 87 is the champion there. That's Gene Mills of Syracuse University, who, any of you that like to apply the high half, he's the inventor of the high half. So, when you're spiral riding with a half Nelson, he was the first guy that actually was popularizing that move, and he was pinning a lot of people in college at the time. And it was a very unique move because we were taught that you never throw a half Nelson when somebody's on their knees, and he was doing it to people on their knees and then pinning them. So that's where that move came from. He's the number 87 all time because he was two-time NCAA champion at 118 pounds. The guy standing next to him in second place is Bobby Weaver of Lehigh, who's ranked number 53 in Flow Wrestling's all-time top 100. So these aren't the top 100, 118 pounders. These are two of the 100 of all weight classes who've ever wrestled in the United States. And so Bobby Weaver was an Olympic gold medalist in 1984. He was on the 1980 Olympic team. As a high schooler in 1976, he was the alternate. So and then he took third in the NCAA tournament the year after this picture. So these are two top 100 of all time. So anytime somebody tells me that they have a tough bracket, I just kind of think to myself, I don't know if you know what a tough bracket really is when two of the guys that are in the top 100 that ever wrestled are in your bracket, and only the top three get to go to the NCAA tournament in your league. So so anyway, that's an interesting picture. And me, I was not ranked in the top 100. So, all right, that's a picture of me here officiating Matt Classic. That picture is, I think, 7 years old now. I've officiated the state tournament here in Washington 15 times. I've officiated the state tournament in the state of North Carolina once as well. So I've been around for a while. And then there's actually a picture when I was coaching 10 years ago down at Bellarmine Prep High School in Tacoma. So 4A school down there. And these are some of my guys from one of our teams. And the 5 years I was there, we put five guys on the podium at state. We hadn't put a guy on the podium from our school at state in the 10 years prior to that. So I'm very proud of that group. They're in this picture here are a total of 15 Matt Classic appearances by the guys in that crowd there. So I spent my time coaching as well. And then I'm also the author of a publication that's sold nationally called the Nine Rules You Thought You Knew About High School Wrestling. So that's purchased by officials in all 50 states around the country. So all of this is just to say, not that I'm have a big ego and I want to brag. I'm just showing you this stuff because I want you to know who your trainer is. I've seen the sport from the lowest levels, trying to coach kids up, or when I started to the very highest level against wrestling against NCAA champions and Olympic gold medalists, as well as I went to two NCAA tournaments myself when I was in college. So I know the sport from the highest to the lowest levels, and I've been around a long time. So, and I'm a national rules sort of expert. So all this is just to say, when I tell you certain things, you can have some confidence that I kind of know what I'm talking about, and that you can probably trust what I'm telling you. Okay, but if you don't, you can always ask me questions. Okay, so that's a little bit of my background. So, what I want to talk to you about next is what we call our Fountain of Youth program. So, the reason you're invited into this tonight, and a number of you have accepted this invitation, so you're on this call now, is because we have a program we call it the Fountain of Youth program. So, I think probably for a lot of you that have been wrestling for the last few years, when you look around, probably a lot of the officials you see look more like me than they look like you, I would guess, right? You probably don't see so many 20-year-olds officiating you as you do 60-year-olds. I'm 63. Um, I'm in pretty good shape for a 63-year-old. Some of my colleagues that are this age aren't in as good of shape probably, and so you're the wrestlers and you see the sort of aging of officials, as well as you see the shortcomings or shortfalls of officials because tournaments run long. They don't seem to have enough officials to cover everything. So it impacts the wrestlers. So I started this program called the Fountain of Youth program, and I go to all the coaches in their coaches meetings before the season begins, and I tell them that I want them to talk to their kids about their graduating seniors specifically about the opportunity to become an official. And then I go back to them after the first weekend of tournaments and say, who are the people that I can invite to the training? And so that's why you're part of this tonight, is because your coach probably told you about this and you said you were interested, or said that you would like to explore it at least. And so the goal of this Fountain of Youth program is to get graduating seniors whose careers will end when your last match ends at the end of this season, because 98% of you won't wrestle beyond high school. Maybe 2% of kids in the state of Washington that compete in the sport of wrestling will wrestle beyond their senior year in high school. The rest of you will probably be done. And now the question is, what are you going to do? Some of you may coach, some of you will walk away from the sport, some of you will officiate. And I want you to officiate if that's something that you're capable of doing and that you would like doing. So, the Fountain of Youth program is intended to target graduating seniors coming out of high school to then transition into becoming part of the officiating group for the high school season. Okay. So here are the goals of this program. One is I want this to be a starting point for new officials who will join PNWA in officiating the high school season next year. So this is a place where we can get people started. Second goal is I want current high school students to have a chance to earn some good money. So a number of the people on this call did officiate last spring. I see people like James George, Jacob Henderson, right? Uh, they officiated Winston Wan. They officiated last season. They had a chance to make good money officiating middle school dual meets in the spring. Third goal, I want to increase the overall population of wrestling officials. Some of the people that officiate for us, when they graduate high school, they will leave this area. But that's okay with me. If they go somewhere else and officiate, I'm happy that that happens too, because I want more officials, period. And if I don't get to keep all of them, I'm happy that they might officiate somewhere else. So I want to increase the population of officials, because in my role as a signer, I'll give you a little bit of inside baseball here. This past weekend, we were able to cover everything that was going on in our area, all the tournaments. On the first weekend, December 7th, we were not able to cover everything. And so we were operating shorthanded in some places. At the Edmonds Woodway Invitational, they were running 9 mats and we had 9 officials. I should have had 12 officials there at least so that they could rotate on and off mats and get breaks. Instead, we had 9 people working 9 mats for like 10 hours. That's not a good thing. There were other tournaments where I told them they couldn't have as many mats as they wanted because I couldn't give them as many of officials as they would need. So we need to make sure that we're not in a shortfall, because if we don't have enough officials, then all of you as wrestlers in high school and middle school programs suffer. And I don't want wrestlers to not have their chance to wrestle because we aren't able to provide enough officials. So trying to solve that problem. So this third goal, I want the overall population of wrestling officials to increase. The fourth goal here is I want the average age of wrestling officials you see to be closer to 30 years old than 60 years old. Probably, if, like I said, in a lot of areas, I look around at other associations in our state, and I see a lot of their officials that are working right now are closer to my age than they are to your age. They look more like me than they look like you, and we got to get out of that world. We do not need. I have a colleague who is 76 years old who is officiating. That's and he is not in as good a shape, and I don't like the fact that he's still officiating. But then again, if he doesn't officiate, now we're one more short. So he doesn't work in our association, but he works regularly, and it's not probably an ideal thing that we are still leaning on a 76-year-old guy to be officiating high school wrestling. So we want the average age pushed down younger people in the prime of life, not people who should be have stepped out. My fifth goal is personally, I want PNWA to have all the capacity to meet all of the demand. So, like I said, December 7th, I was came up short. This past Saturday, I did have enough, but the only reason I had enough is because some of the people who were graduates of this program and then left town and came back into town because of their Christmas break at school, I had some of them officiating for me. I had some of our spring officials who are still in high school who supported a JV tournament at Woodinville. They got themselves certified to officiate this past Saturday, and they helped officiate a JV tournament. So if I didn't have those people who were part of this program last year and previous years showing up over the Christmas break to help out, I would have been six or seven officials short. So personally, I want more people within PNWA so that I don't have to necessarily hope and pray that people who have officiated for us before are coming back to town and are willing to officiate, or that I can somehow tap into high schoolers that are still on their teams and being able to employ them to cover an event during their regular season. Okay. So what I want you to do is you sort of listen to the rest of this tonight, and anytime anyone has any questions, just butt in and say, hey, I have a question or whatever. Or so just do that. Um, I want you to be empowered to ask any questions as we go through this. But as we go through the rest of this, I want you to consider how your own personal goals will align with what my goals here are. Okay, so all of these things to help you earn money, give you a starting point, etc. Think about those for your own situation, and think about how your situation, maybe it aligns with what PNWA's goals are, and that's a perfect marriage. It's a win-win. But if it doesn't, like I said, it may not. And if it doesn't, I want you to be able to sort of discern that, okay? So let me share a little bit about last spring, so give you sort of a sense, for those that have not done this before, sort of what happened last spring as a case study, right? Last spring, we had 30 high schoolers that officiated during our spring middle school season, okay? So 30 people just like you, that did actually officiate during the spring middle school season, which happens in mid to late February through the end of March. And those are just pictures of some of the people that were there last spring for us officiating. In that group, we had 12 females that got trained up to officiate. So this is great because we need more female officials too. We actually had a bit of a landmark on Saturday out at Juanita High School for the Santa Slam tournament, because we had a girls tournament and a guys tournament running side by side. Um, on 8 mats. So 4 mats for the girls, 4 mats for the boys. And for the girls tournament, 16 person bracket, big tournament. We had 5 female officials from PNWA officiating that event. There's no other association in the country that could do what we just did, to put an entire crew to cover 4 mats that way with only women from only our association. So there have been some other tournaments where they cobbled together a female crew, but that's because they were borrowing from different places. We did it with 5 women from our own association. So part of it is because of this, right? 12 female officials that were part of our spring group. So 3 of them actually ended up officiating as part of this event on Saturday. So out of our group last year, though, 3 of our graduates came into PNWA and are working for us. 3 of them I referred off to other places. So one's in Pullman, one's in Tucson, Arizona, and one's in Vermont. Okay. And they're officiating down there in those places. 14 different high schools contributed someone in. We have 54 high schools that PNWA services. So in our geography, and I'll show you this in a little while, we cover 54 different high schools. So when 14 high schools referred someone like you into this last year, that only represents 27% of the schools we cover. So, like I said, 98% of the seniors that graduate, they're not going to wrestle in college. So, why shouldn't some of them try to officiate and stay in the sport that way? But if only like a quarter of the schools, they all have graduating seniors. I mean, it's a rare exception that some school doesn't have any graduating seniors, but they all have graduating seniors. So if only a quarter of the schools are referring someone over to me, there's more people out there that could be referred in and could consider this. So, but that was last year's metric. And then that group of officials, they earned $20,000 total, which was about an average of about $625 per person. Okay, and we had someone that earned almost $1,000. Others that earned less than $600, right? But on average, it was about 625 per person. Okay, so and that's all for just doing a handful of events across like a 5 or 6 week period. Okay, so that was last year's program and how things worked out. So what I want you to do is I want you to hopefully this comes through sound wise. I don't know if when I shared this, if that was, let me do something real quick, make sure that, there we go, share sound. Okay, good. So I want you to listen to some of the people that were in last year's program and you can hear for yourselves. These are your peers. So I'll just roll the video for you. I hope I'll roll it. Here we go.
Why did you get started officiating?
So let me pause real quick. Are you hearing the sound from the video? Somebody give me a thumbs up or say yay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So this is just a 3-minute video. So here we go.
I'm just really passionate about the sport of wrestling, and I was sad when my senior season was over, so I wanted to find a way to stay involved and keep watching wrestling.
I just finished my senior high school season, and I had to stay in the sport somehow, and thought I'd give back to the sport that's given me so much.
Awesome. Go after it.
Jackie just told me about it after regionals, and I thought it was really fun because it was like something I could do in my spare time. So that's why I
well, I was a senior and I didn't want to leave wrestling, so I wanted to keep doing this.
I love wrestling, you know. Gotta help the younger kids.
All right.
From Coach G, she's my everything, and I don't know, I wanted a leadership opportunity, and this is my first job.
Oh, good.
I wanted the experience of having that first job and getting paid, and I really didn't have anything else to do outside of wrestling, and I found like a really good passion for it.
So I got started when I first heard about it from Gina.
Okay.
And
Gina's your coach.
And I thought it would be a cool opportunity to do this to better understand how to wrestle, why refs call it how they do.
Yeah.
Like kind of get a perspective that way.
Yeah.
My coach is an official, and she told me to do it.
All right.
Tough lessons learned. Definitely don't try arguing with the coaches. Just talk it out if they really want to talk it out, or try to dismiss them to the best of your ability.
Just stand up for yourself, and you got to be confident. Like, even if you're not sure, just go for it. Like, your calls matter.
Sometimes the coaches argue with my calls, but it makes me think about my calls, so it's a positive.
Yeah, they do that with me too.
You definitely have to stand up for yourself against the coaches. They might try to push you around. That's just something you have to learn.
Well,
I don't like confrontation, and sometimes you have to get confronted, so.
and have you had fun?
100%.
Yeah. Are you having fun this season?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a spectacular, adventure. Lily especially. It's fun.
Are you having fun? So, what's the highlight so far?
The highlight so far, I had a lot of fun at the Texahoma championship a couple weeks back. That was a good time.
And are you enjoying officiating?
Yes.
What's the highlight for you?
I like watching wrestling, and you get to watch wrestling.
Okay.
Very fun.
All right, so Leslie, are you having fun?
Yes, I'm having a lot of fun.
All right, so Jackie Benson, are you having fun?
I'm having so much fun.
And if somebody was asking you, hey, I'm thinking about officiating. I heard you officiate. What do you think? What would you tell them?
You should do it.
Do you like the money?
Yes. Definitely try it out. It's a good experience if you're looking for something to do after school, and also just to get to know people and learn some really good life skills of like leadership and commitment, and just like getting paid and dealing with money and things like that. Just like get into it. It's fun.
Awesome.
I would say definitely do it.
I challenge you to give it a go. Why not?
So I'll pause there for a second, because we do have some people that were officiated last spring, and I want to give them a chance real quick to sort of speak into this. So I can see, like I said, Jacob Henderson, James George, Michelle Venegas, you're back on now. So for any of you that did this, Andrew Feist, last season, does that video ring true for you in your experience? Like, maybe share real quick, like what your experience was for the other folks that are considering this for the first time. So if someone wants to jump in, just say, I'll share, or something to that effect. Come on, somebody be brave.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Go ahead.
Well, for me, I first learned about it because I heard about how much it pays. And then after that, I found it's a kind of fun thing to do in my spare time, which had got me enough money that I could spend a little more throughout the year on things I wanted to do. And then it just kind of keeps going for me.
Good. Thanks, Winston. And I saw James, you posted in the chat. It's 100% true from your experience as well. How about you, Jacob Henderson? Just saw you the other day. Saw you twice last week, actually, right?
Yeah. What was the question? Sorry.
Just based off of what everyone else in that video was sharing in terms of like the things they were enjoying or whatever from officiating, did that resonate with you? Was your experience a good one?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. I think what they said like wrapped it up pretty well.
Okay, excellent. So that's just to let everyone else know that like I didn't use AI to create like something that nobody actually said or felt. It's the thing I want you to sort of take away from that video, that I've showed this video actually to people around the country because they're curious about this program. And so when I shared this with them, the thing that really pops for a lot of people when they listen to the folks that were in the program last year is that number one, like they had a lot of fun. And you just heard like James and Winston and Jacob saying the same thing. Like it was fun. So for those of you that look at this and think, oh, that is could be kind of stressful, or I'm not sure I really want to step into that or whatever, like just know that your colleagues that have done this before, like they had a fun experience. Like we work hard to make sure that uh, the thing they're doing is a fun activity. Um, Officiating wrestling is a very difficult and complex endeavor. It's probably the hardest sport to officiate, to be honest with you, but we we can train you to do it, and then you can see like just from the folks in that video, those folks in the video, like they had only officiated like probably 2 weeks before I took those videos. So it's not like they had, weeks and weeks and months and years of experience. Like they'd only officiated a couple weeks. They're already having fun. So that's one thing I want you to take away from that. Number two is that this is something that they felt was important to do, like to give back to the sport. Like this is a way that they could help those coming up behind them So you heard that sort of as a theme from them as well. So they had fun, and it's an important activity. Like it helps others. So some things I just want you to sort of take away from that. Okay. So let me share a little bit of like nuts and bolts about officiating, some things to be aware of. Um, Governing organizations that you have to deal with here. You've got like the WIAA. So for those of you that are familiar with our state association, right? The WIAA is the group that they represent all the schools and they sanction all of these sports and activities. So they're the ones that sanction high school football, high school wrestling, cheer and dance, debate, all state chorus, etc. Like the WIAA is the one that does that, okay? The NFHS is the National Federation of High Schools. So that's what NFHS stands for. That's their logo there, their symbol. And they are the rules body for all the sports. So for every sport, whether it's wrestling or volleyball or basketball or whatever, they publish the official rules so that we're all operating off the same rule book. So that's sort of your governing body when it comes to the rules. Then there's the Washington Officials Association, the WOA, and this group, this organization oversees all of the officials statewide, and that's not just in wrestling, but for all sports. Okay, so that's our uh, body that we have to adhere and comply with is the WOA, and they also serve as a liaison into the WIAA. So they deal with the leadership of the WIAA. And so if I gave you an analogy that some of you might understand, it might be sort of akin to like the automobile manufacturer versus the auto workers union. So if the WIAA would be sort of like your car company, the WOA would be like your auto workers union. You know, the WOA has like all of the officials, all the workers, as it were. The WIA is sort of our customer who needs those officials because they are the ones who have the schools who are putting on wrestling events and they need officials for those. So they need to work with the WOA to make sure that it's all sort of laid out so that it's fair to the officials and that they get compensated, etc. And then there's the Pacific Northwest Wrestling Officials Association, PNWA. Okay. We're the group that runs all the wrestling officials basically in King County. I'll show you sort of the precise geography in a moment, but sort of basically we cover all of King County. And then we are a member organization of the WOA. So underneath the umbrella of the Washington Officials Association are local associations like the Pacific Northwest Wrestling Officials Association, but not just for wrestling. There are local associations for all the other sports as well. So there's the PNFOA, which is the Pacific Northwest Football Officials Association. They cover the same geography as we do in wrestling. You know, they're covering all these King County schools. Okay, so each sport is divided up geographically around the state for officials associations so that within a certain geography, a certain group is the one providing the officials for them, and they all are part of operate under the WOA. Okay, so and to be more precise about sort of the geography, I got my slides out of order here real quick. Let me get a quick change here to this. Okay. All right. So, like I said, we covered most of King County, not all, not 100% of it. There's like a dividing line from Federal Way and south of Federal Way. Federal Way is kind of on almost the southern edge of King County, but all the schools that might be in King County that are south of from Federal Way south aren't ours. So we have everything north of Federal Way all the way to the Snohomish County border, and then we actually have four schools that are part of Snohomish County. So Edmonds Woodway, Linwood, Meadowdale, Mount Lake Terrace are four Snohomish County schools that we cover as well. And then we cover everything from West Seattle all the way to North Bend at Mount Si High School. So that's in that area, like I said, we have 54 high schools we cover, and we cover 48 middle schools. So we have 102 different schools that we're servicing. We're the largest wrestling officials association in the state because of how much we have to cover. Okay. And that's a good thing because that's what creates the opportunity for those of you that want to officiate. We have lots of opportunity. So people who want to do it, people want to make some money, give them the chance to do that. Okay. So let me talk about our spring middle school leagues real quick, because uh, I had close to 60 people who said, "Hey, I'm interested in doing this," and I sent the invite out to, but I can't have 60 people. So, and I can't have 60 people who all like live in Bothell or whatever. Like it, I have six different leagues this spring I support. So I'm going to run you through the six different leagues and sort of how many officials I need to cover them. And I can't afford to have too many officials because if I bring on too many officials, you won't get the chance to officiate enough and you won't make as much money. So in the case here, these two leagues I'm showing you right now, Snow King League, which is middle schools that feed into schools that are part of the Westco South high school conference, right? So high schools like Meadowdale, Linwood, Mount Lake Terrace, and then down in Shorecrest, Shorewood. So that's the middle schools that the Snow King serves. They have a 3:45 start time for their dual meets, and I'll need six officials to cover that area. Okay. North Shore schools are part of the Kinko, and they're the schools that are sort of clustered around Bothell and Woodinville. So they feed high schools like Inglemore, Bothell High School, North Creek, Woodinville High School, as well as like Juanita and Redmond. Or no, no, no. I'm sorry, I'm going too far south. So just Woodinville, Inglemore, Bothell, North Creek, those schools. So they're here. They have a 4 o'clock start time, and I'll need six officials to cover the events in that league. And anybody that signs up to do this, um, there's some requisite sort of maturity that you have to fill the role as a referee, but at a minimum you also need to have some reliable transportation so that you can get to these schools on time. So if you're not uh, if you don't have your own car or whatever, you'd have to make sure you have an arrangement either to get a ride from someone or somehow if you could take transit or something, but everyone has to be able to get to these schools at these times. Okay. For what I call the Eastern. So those are what I call my Northern leagues. For my Eastern leagues, then on the right hand side of there's the Lake Washington School District. They have 8 different schools in their middle school league, and I need six officials to cover that. They have a 3:45 start time. So these are the schools that feed like Juanita High School, Redmond High School, Lake Washington High School. Um, and even over to East Lake High School. So those schools, those 8 schools, they start at 3:45 in the afternoon when they have their events. Over on the left side of the slide here, Renton School District, they have four middle schools, and so I need three officials to cover the events that they have. They have a 3 o'clock start time. So, and the reason I divide these up geographically is because, like, if you lived up in, I don't know, if you lived in Edmonds, I wouldn't expect to send you down to Renton to be officiating. You would never make it probably in time for a 3 o'clock start time to begin with. So that's why people from all around our geography are invited into this so that hopefully, like, three people who live close enough to the Renton schools are ultimately going to be the ones that I can be able to assign into those. Okay. All right, and then the last is what I call my South schools. So the Highline School District there on the left, they have 5 different middle schools, and I need three officials to cover their events. They start at 3:45 in the afternoon, and Kent Tahoma School District, they have now nine. They have 9 middle schools. I need six officials to cover their events. They have a 4 o'clock start time. So those are the different leagues that will kick off after the high school season ends. The earliest that starts, actually, the Kent-Tahoma schools will start before the state tournament is conducted for the high schools. So every other league, the other five leagues, they don't start until after the high school season is completely finished. So after Matt Classic's over, then they'll start their dual meets and jamborees. All right, so let me give you a little snapshot about the WA, some things to know if you officiate. We have a tool online called Arbiter. So if you officiate, you get an account so you can log into Arbiter. And in Arbiter, there is what's called a central hub. It's basically the home page for the Washington Officials Association. So inside of that tool, there is a spot inside the tool which is called the central hub, and that's where all the stuff that the WA has available to us can be found. The WA provides what's called labor and industries insurance coverage for any official that's working a WIAA sanctioned event. So if the school is part of the WIA and you officiate one of their contests and you were to get injured, this doesn't apply so much to high school students as it does to people who have regular jobs. But if you got injured officiating one of those events for a WIA school, then they would help pay for your health insurance or your health bills. So if, like, say I broke my ankle or something, they would help pay for some of the doctor bills. And then if you have a job and you're missing work because you're now injured or sidelined because of something that happened while you were officiating, they would offset your lost income as well. So by being a member of the WOA, you get that L&I coverage as well. The WOA is partnered with an organization called the National Association of Sports Officials, NASO, or we call it NASO. So the partnership with NASO provides another level of insurance to us as officials called general liability, meaning if I'm officiating an event because I have NASO insurance coverage, I'm covered for several $1 million in the event something happens and somebody says, well, let's sue the official because my son or daughter got their, uh, leg broken in the middle of a wrestling match that Bob Turner was officiating. Let's take Bob Turner to court and try to sue him. The NASO coverage would cover me for stuff like that. So, in other words, we can officiate without necessarily being afraid that, well, gosh, if I officiate and make some mistake, I might lose my house. That's what that's intended to prevent. Like we don't want officials worrying about stuff like that. Like just do your job, and sometimes bad things can happen. Like I don't know anyone that's ever been involved in a suit, that somebody brought against them because of something that happened while they were officiating. But I have heard stories from around the country. It's kind of a rare thing, but you hear stories once in a while of somebody taking a referee to court for something, not just for wrestling. Can happen in football, basketball, etc. Like taking them to court, wanting to sue them because of something that happened. And thankfully, with the NASO insurance, we got all that covered, and we don't have to worry that somehow we're going to go broke because of something that happened while we were officiating an event. Okay. And then, as part of the WOA, we have to get certified so that they have a set of requirements that we have to complete in order to earn our certification. It starts with a background check. Um, so they use an agency to do background checks on us to make sure that we don't have, like, some felon or some criminal or something, somebody that shouldn't be around kids or whatever, officiating high school and middle school events. Okay, so background check. There's a clinic on concussion management, so get you smart as an official to recognize what signs of a concussion are, because what we do in our job is we are trying to protect competitors as well as make sure the match is run according to the rules. So, concussion clinic. There are short little videos from the WA and NASO. So WA clinic, NASO clinic. They're just sort of a couple of minutes long to just sort of tee up with you what each of those organizations does for you. Okay. There is a diversity set of modules that we do. So in our role as referees, we interact with, the general population, the schools and teams that we service. There's a wide spectrum of people, diversity of, and so because we're dealing with a diverse population, we as officials should make sure that we're uh, prepared, and the diversity modules help prepare us to be good in terms of our interactions with people who may come from different backgrounds than what we come from. Okay. Number six is there's a clinic about the National Federation's rules changes for the year. So there's a clinic to go over the rules changes. And then number seven, there's a test. There's a rules test that you take, and you have to score 70% or higher on the test. The test is divided into two sections. One is called the Wrestling 101 test. It covers all the basic things about the sport. And then there's a Wrestling 201 test, which is geared towards covering more of focus on the rule changes for this year, as well as some of the more sort of advanced or sophisticated sort of calls that we have to make. Okay, so all of those things, you complete them and you get certified by the WOA so that you can officiate. And then your WOA membership gives you a free pass to any WIAA state championship event. So if you complete this training and you get certified with a WOA, you're going to get a WOA membership card. And then you can go, if you don't qualify to compete in the MAC Classic, you can go watch the MAC Classic for free. Or you can go to the state basketball playoffs for free, or championship for free. State baseball championships, state track and field meet, whatever. Like, me personally, I've used that pass a lot. I'm a father of 7 kids, and so some of my kids that competed in stuff, I was able to go to the all-state cheer competition a couple of times when my daughter was doing that. I went to the state track meet when my daughter competed in that. I've been to the state solo ensemble, a state all-state band. So I've been to a lot of stuff. I've gone to see the state basketball tournament. When I wasn't officiating Matt Classic, I went and watched for free. So it's a nice benefit. You member of the WOA, you get to go to the WIA state championship events for free. Okay. Now there are dues that the WA extracts from all of us. $115 are the annual dues. They charge us $80 for our NASO coverage, and they charge us $35 per sport we officiate. We at PNWA, for our spring program, we offset that cost. So we're trying to make it so that people who want to officiate who are in high school, that we're getting rid of the barriers to them officiating. So we don't want you to have to spend money on stuff. This is one of the things we don't want you to have to spend money on is $115 in annual dues. So we reimburse you for half of that. We give you $55 back if you end up officiating for us, and then I'll show you an officiating kit we give you, so that you don't have to spend money on the shirt, the whistle, the bands, the disc, etc. So we don't want you to spend money on uniform items either. So we have those that we can give to you on loan, and then if you return them at the end of the season, we will rebate you $55 of that annual dues that would get withheld from your pay. Okay, so trying to make it easy for people who want to do this. None of this money, though, has to come out of your wallet. So anything that the WOA withholds for annual dues, they do that by withholding from stuff you're getting paid. So I'll explain how that works in a little bit when we get into the whole thing about how you get paid. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the role of the official. And I talk about in this session here, this is very broad and high level. In this session, we're not focused on a bunch of detailed rules and stuff. I want you to understand what it means to be a referee. And I want you to, like I said, be informed enough to make a decision of, yeah, this is something that I think I'd be interested in, or nah, maybe not. Whatever it is, I want to give you enough information to understand that. And if you do choose to pursue this, I want you to enter in the right way. Okay. So part of that big picture, talk about the role of the official. So the official plays what I call four main roles. First is that you administer the contest. So without a referee, we don't have official contests. There are pickup basketball games that probably happen at your school or local school near you, elementary school maybe, or playground or whatever, but nobody knows or cares what happened in those pickup games other than the people that played them. But the things that we officiate, people care about. They are schools, they have teams, they issue uniforms, there's standings, there's championships. Well, that's all official stuff, and they need referees to administer their contests. Without referees, nobody cares about certain events. So that's an important role for us to administer the contest. That's what legitimizes the contest, okay? Second thing is we're responsible for all the rulings and judgments. So when you're a referee, and especially in the sport of wrestling, where generally about 95% of the time, there's only one referee on a mat. So that means you're responsible for all the rulings and judgments. You don't have anyone else there to help you. And whatever you decide is final. If I award a takedown, that's a takedown. There isn't somebody that gets to come in and say, nope, take that off the board. Bob's wrong. I don't agree with Bob. Nope, that's not. I'm the referee. If I'm the only referee on that mat and I say it's a reversal, it's a reversal. If I say it's a pin, it's a pin. Okay. So that's a responsibility, though. That's part of our role. So, we don't take that lightly. Like, we had an incident happen at the tournament on Saturday. I was at Juanita, where I wasn't the official who did this, but one of my officials on the crew ended up ejecting a kid. Um, that's a serious responsibility because when he ejected that kid lost his medal for placing. His team lost all the team points he had earned. His team also got 3 team points deducted because of his ejection. And that kid now has to sit out whatever their next competition is. So when he decided to eject that kid for his behavior, the thing I was asking him, because I was the head official, was like, okay, tell me what he did, and explain to me why what he did warranted you kicking him out. Because I just wanted to vet that with him because I know all the consequences of what happens if he ejects him, and I want to make sure that he's just not, being overly sensitive, that some kid who did something that I might look at and go, oh, I don't think that rises to the level of ejecting him, making him sit out another event. Like, I just wanted to confirm that ruling with him, and he explained it to me, and I said, okay, yeah, that makes sense. What that kid did went way over the line, and fine, ejections called for here. So, but that's part of our role. We have to be responsible for those rulings and judgments because we're trying to serve these wrestlers. That's our customer, trying to serve the coaches and teams. And we want to make sure we're doing a good job of that, okay? The third role is you're a role model. So, you know, when you look at a wrestling mat at a dual meet, let's say, and let's say there's one mat in the middle of the gym, 2 teams facing each other. There's a maximum of 3 people on that mat. Sometimes there's only one person on that mat. In between matches, there's only one person. That person is you. And of the 3 people, you're one of them, and you're dressed differently, and people can see you. So just like in this little visual here, the little red person in the middle of all those blue people stands out. Well, when you're a referee, you stand out. And as such, now you become a role model because number one, you are in a role where you have responsibility over all these competitors and over the competition in total. But because you're very visible, now people are looking at you. And whatever you do or say, they're going to see or hear. And in today's society, they probably someone's gonna video it. So just understand that if you are an official, that when you show up at a place to officiate something, that you are a role model to everyone else and you need to conduct yourself accordingly, okay? You can't be like goofing around and cutting up too much. Like, it's okay to be, happy and lighthearted, but and I tell this to high school aged officials, because sometimes when you're officiating middle school, you probably know some of these kids. Maybe your brother or sister's on that one of those middle school teams. Maybe that's your old team, your coach, etc. Um, because you're closer in age to these middle school kids, like they may look at you differently than they would look at me, some old man, right? Like they may not kind of give you the same automatic level of like respect or dignity that they might accord to somebody they look at who looks more like their dad or some mom or something, right? So you need to be aware of that if you step into this role, that when you're going to some middle school to officiate something, that again, as a role model, you can't be, acting out in certain ways that you might be acting with them normally when you're not in this kind of a role. So just something to be aware of. And the last thing is you're a steward of the sport. So why do I officiate? Why do I care? Because I care about the sport of wrestling. And I want people who care about the sport of wrestling to officiate wrestling. My number one criteria when somebody approaches me and asks about officiating, I ask them if they love the sport. I want people who love the sport. Like that's my primary target audience is I want people who love the sport. If they don't love the sport, they can still officiate and they can still be competent. But people who love the sport care about it and they want to see the sport thrive and they want the sport to get passed down. So all of you have coaches who help raise you up so you could compete and participate in this sport. Um, just like when I was your age, I had a coach. I had referees that officiated us. Like, you know, they helped give the sport to me. Now, in my role as an official the last 35 years, I'm helping give the sport back to people like you. I help give the sport to people that might be your fathers or mothers. Like I'm at an age now where I'm running into people where I go, "Oh, wait a second. I officiated your dad when he was in high school, right?" Like so I want us in our role to help pass the sport on to others. So if we don't have enough referees for everything, the sport will suffer because people won't get to participate. And if we go down that path where there aren't enough referees to facilitate the number of kids that want to wrestle, we could start a downward spiral of, well, gee, I guess it doesn't matter because they don't. If I turned out, but every time they canceled us because there wasn't an official or whatever, like, gee, I don't think I'll want to turn out anymore. Neither will my friends. Like, so we're an important part of this. And without us, they don't have the competitions, and the sport doesn't get passed on. So I just want you to be aware that I want you to be part of passing that sport on to others. And you saw that from the people in the video. They're your age and they are talking that way. They're saying, yeah, I'm having so much fun, but I'm also helping pass the sport on to others. Hey, got to help the ones coming up behind us. Like that's part of our role, okay? Anybody have any questions about these roles or expectations of what I just laid out in the role of a referee? Again, if you have a question, just shout it out, and I want to make sure to address it because again, I want you to make sure that you are getting all the information you're going to need to make your own decision to discern this. All right, no questions. I'll move on then. Let me give you a quick snapshot of the PNWA as an organization. We exist because we're a source of training and standardization. So a training event like this happens because we have a group called PNWA that has members that officiate, and we need to be able to bring in new members and help train them up as well. So that's part of our mission is to be a place where you can get trained and we can standardize how officials operate. Me specifically in my role as a signer does 98% of this is coordinating with schools. So when they are needing officials and they have events, I'm working with them to make sure I understand, okay, Linwood's, you're hosting a tournament on the 21st of December. How many mats are you running? Okay, you're going to run 5 mats and then you're going to break it down to 4 when you get to the semi. Okay, like, and you're starting weigh in at 7:30, wrestling starts at 9:30. Like, I have to understand all of that stuff so that I can then assign the right number of officials and know that they're going to show up to the school at the right time and they know kind of what to expect. So we do that. We don't make individual officials figure out all that stuff for all the myriad of events that you might have to go work or officiate. The arbiter system, we all belong to it, so you get an account, and that's where you get your assignments. So you log in, and you can see on your schedule the stuff that gets assigned to you, and it'll give you the details of, oh, okay, it's on this date. Start time is this. This is it's this level of competition. It's a middle school double duel meet. The home school is Einstein Middle School. The away school is Harbor Point. Okay, like, and 4 o'clock start time or whatever. Like, all that stuff's in there. So we get our assignments through Arbiter that way. Okay, Arbiter will also send you an email when you get an assignment to alert you that, hey, boom, you have an assignment. So PNWA, not that this applies to you as spring officials, but if you officiate starting next fall, we then have to figure out who's eligible to officiate postseason tournaments like the district tournament and the state tournament. Okay. We provide this professional support that referees need and want, as well as fellowship. Like, when you officiate, you start to form relationships and friendships with your colleagues that officiate as well. So I've gotten to know a lot of people over the years because they officiate and I officiate. It's a good time. PNWA is an organization. We have some expenses. Normally, our dues would be $25 annually for someone to be a member, but we waived those dues the last 4 years, and we're waiving them again this year because we do make some money off of the events that our members officiate. So when they officiate, a small percentage of the fees that are paid by the schools for the referees, a little slice of that comes to the PNWA. So from that funding, we pay for all of our own overhead, like our phone system and for postage to mail things out, pay for, our beginning of season kickoff meeting slash party, our end of season banquet. We pay for those things. So there's some expenses we have. We don't charge our members currently for that stuff, so you won't have to pay any of that money. Okay. All right. So let's talk about assignments. This is sort of the question. Are we able to decline an assignment like I have a wrestling tournament? Yeah. Yes, you are. So I'll explain. So Sage, yes, good question. You're sort of anticipating what's about to be revealed here. So assignments. Arbiter is the tool. So once you are, if you decide to officiate and you get a login to Arbiter, you need to be using Arbiter. And it means you need to log in often because schedules can change. The communication mode for PNWA, because I have to deal with literally almost 100 referees in a season, and I've got like usually on the order of a total of 700 to 800 officiating slots that I'm managing across an entire season. Like, I can't like be communicating one on one with everybody all the time. So the primary mode of communication is email. Now, I know for most of you, maybe all of you, this might be true. You probably don't like email. You probably don't use it that often. It's not your main thing to communicate. So I get that. Um, but unfortunately, because Arbiter generates emails as its primary way of communicating, and we have to send communications out to like the myriad of officials that are members that work with us, like, email is the way that gets done. So that's the primary form of communication. The phone is the secondary, and it's done by exception. It's done for more short fuse stuff. So if I need to get a hold of someone because I need them to know something quickly or act on something quickly, I'll use the phone. I'll either call them or text them. But if we have more lead time, you're getting communications primarily by email, okay? Inside the Arbiter tool, you can put blocks. So to Sage's question about declining an assignment, hopefully you don't get assigned to something that you're not available for. And in the tool, you can put there's a page you can go to. You have a little image of it there, pops up the calendar for that month, and you can sort of see all those red blocks on there. Those are dates that I blocked out. I'm not available to officiate on those days in that particular month or whatever. So you can put those blocks in there. That way, when I'm trying to assign people to something, you won't show up as an option that day. And that way, hopefully, I'm not assigning something to you that then you go later on, oh, I can't take this assignment. I have a dental appointment that afternoon, or I'm taking the SAT or whatever. So blocks help us to avoid that altogether. And when you do get an assignment, what I want you to do is accept or decline it, what I call expeditiously, meaning within 24 hours, just make your decision. Go with whatever information you have. So if you're afraid that you won't be able to work something because you're doing something with your family, but it isn't, you're not sure, your mom or dad hasn't quite confirmed that, yes, we're all going to grandma's house that night for dinner at 6 or whatever. Like, if you don't know for certain, but you wouldn't want to, be unable to go to grandma's or whatever, you might say, okay, fine, based on what I know, it's not finalized, but I'm going to decline this assignment because I need to be able to go with my family to go visit grandma or whatever. Like, just make the decision based on what you know in 24 hours. If you don't have anything blocking you or any reason why you wouldn't want to decline it and you want to take the assignment, just accept it. Now, uh, the longer it goes without somebody accepting or declining something, the more it stresses me because when somebody, if I send an assignment out to somebody, let's say, and it's going to be 2 weeks from now, if they tell me uh, 1 week and 6 days prior that, you know what, I can't take that assignment, Bob, that's fine. I got a week and 6 days before that thing's even going to happen. But if you sit on it and some number of days go by and suddenly like we're within a 1 week of this event and I still don't know if you're going to take it or not, like it just puts stress on me if I don't know for sure somebody's going to take something or if they're going to not take it so I can assign it to somebody else. So just make your decision within 24 hours. Now, if you accept an assignment, so uh, this is sort of related to Gage's question or Sage's question. If you accept an assignment and then you find out, uh-oh, I didn't know, but we have to do this. I have to do this thing for this class that afternoon. I'm sorry, Bob. I told you next Thursday that I could officiate, but I'm required. It's a chemistry lab, and the only day we can do it is that Thursday or whatever. Like, okay, we can take you off the assignment. So, again, same principle. Let me know as soon as you know. Don't wait till the Thursday that the event's happening at 2 o'clock to go, oh, by the way, Bob, I can't go today to the 3:30 thing because I have a chem lab. Like, oh, great. Like, they're supposed to start wrestling in an hour, and now you're telling me. So, if you could have told me a week ago, great. I can now act on that and assign someone else. So just let me know if you need to be taken off an assignment. And if it's less than 48 hours till the event, then call me or text me. Okay. Because this will happen, right? You're assigned to work something this Tuesday afternoon. You're supposed to be at like, um, I don't know, Kirkland Middle School for their 3:45 dual meet. And you wake up on that Tuesday morning, you got 102-degree temperature. You're texting me going, Bob, I'm supposed to be at Kirkland Middle School this afternoon. No way, I'm sick. I got 102-degree fever. All right. That's when you're using the phone to contact me so that, okay, boom, here at like 8 a.m., I'm working it furiously to find somebody to fill that slot that needs to be filled at 3:45 that afternoon, okay? So that's how that works. In Arbiter, the start time you'll see when you get an assignment, that's the start time that the contest, that the wrestling actually begins. Okay, so when you see like if it says Kirkland Middle School 3:45 start time, that means they start wrestling at 3:45. So that means we have to be on site prior to that to do some pre-meet duties. In the middle schools, we only require you to be there 15 minutes ahead of time. We don't do weigh-ins for any of these middle schools. So we don't need to be there an hour before or whatever to be weighing people in. So we just need you there 15 minutes prior. There's just some small pre-meet checks you can make to make sure that the competitors are ready to go, properly equipped, that the venue like is set up safely, etc. And then, if it says 3:45 is the start time, that's what time we want to be blowing the whistle or very, very close to that, okay? I put this in here just to remind everyone that this is a job, and I need to be able to rely on you. So, just like any employer, if you worked over at Burger King or at the Marshall's store or whatever, like they expect you to be there for your shift. Like they're counting on you. If you're not there, customers don't get served, right? Like so, this is a job too. So I need to know that you're reliable, and I'm counting on you to be reliable. But if you show me you're not reliable, I'll fire you. And I've only done this once in the last 15 years, but I just need to know that you're going to follow through on your commitment because if you don't, some kids might not get to wrestle that day, and I don't want that to happen. Now, stuff happens. I've had referees get into car accidents on the way to their event, and then we didn't have an official there that night. Like we couldn't help it. Like that's understandable. But if it's something that's avoidable, again, like you wake up sick and you can tell me that and then I can work it. Or you find out you have to do a school thing instead a week from now. Like you can let me know that. But if you don't let me know stuff like that, and then I'm getting a call at 3:50 p.m. from Kirkland Middle School coach going, "Hey Bob, where's my official?" And I'm furiously like looking it up, going, "Let me see." We're real sick. I'm like, oh, Jenny is supposed to be there. I'm reaching out to Jenny, where are you? And oh, I'm sorry, Bob. Yeah, yeah. Like I decided to go hang out with my friends today or whatever. Like that can't happen. So it did happen one time about I don't know, 10 years ago, kid did that to me. I got that phone call like 5 minutes after they were supposed to be starting. I was trying to get a hold of the kid. I finally get a hold of him like 10 minutes later, and then that's when the kid's telling me, "Oh yeah, yeah, I can't be there today." Yeah, the thing was supposed to start 15 minutes ago, and now he's telling me he can't be there. I just told him, "That's it, you're done." And that's the one guy I had to fire. So I only tell you that story. Like it should never happen. I'm assuming all of you, because you signed up to explore this, are probably responsible people, and so I just say this, make sure you understand clearly, like this is a job, and as a job, also you're getting paid. It's also work experience. Like I write referral letters for people who are applying to jobs because I'm a reference. This is a job they had, and I'm a good reference for them. So, you know, that's that's enough of that. I don't want to pound on that too much more. All right, let's talk about pay. So you'll work at the middle school level. It's also possible we have kids club events during the fall season. Some of them take place before you would start competing in the month of November. So there's chances to officiate some of that stuff as well. But the pay scale here, you see highlighted there, there are dual meets and then there are tournaments. So dual meets get paid at a flat rate, and the official gets paid $56.50 for a middle school dual meet. And then there's what we call exhibition matches. So the middle school leagues that we support tend to have 18 weight classes. So in high school, you have 14 weight classes. If you're on your high school team, there's 14 weight classes, right? In middle school, there's 18. So when two schools face each other in a dual meet and they wrestle, and then one team wins 66 to 40 or whatever, okay, that's fine. Then they have all these other kids they want to wrestle. And if they don't have a JV dual meet, some of the leagues do have a separate JV dual meet that they will have on top of the varsity dual meet for their middle school. But if they don't have a separate dual meet for the extras, then we call that an exhibition. And at the middle school level, for every exhibition match you officiate, you will get $3. So the dual meet's over, and um, Cedar Heights Middle School has defeated Matson Middle School 62-38. Great. And then they say, okay, great. This sixth grade kid against their sixth grade kid. My seventh grade JV guy against their seventh grade JV guy, whatever. Like for every one of those matches, $3 for you. So you just count them up as you officiate them, and you'll report that to me in the aftermath so I can charge them $3 per and pay you $3 per. And so when they start doing that, you will enjoy it when you get some kid to go out there and you blow the whistle and he pins the other kid in 10 seconds. When he pins the kid in 10 seconds, cha-ching, you just made $3. you're, you're thinking, please send me 20 of these 10-second pin matches, please. I'll make 60 more dollars in like 10 minutes. So, yeah, regardless of how long or short that exhibition match is, you'll get paid $3. Now, you can see from the pay scale as we look ahead towards if you officiate in the fall, like after you graduate, for those of you that are seniors, um, high school varsity dual meet, the official gets paid $74.25. JV high school dual meet, $62.75. And then you can see the exhibition fees. So at the high school level, when one of my high school varsity officials is working, uh, especially this happens with double dual meets because they don't necessarily have a JV mat. So you got four teams at a site, going to do two high school varsity dual meets for each of the teams, right? So you do the two dual meets, but they have JVs they want to wrestle. So they're wrestling JVs in between the dual meets and after the dual meets, etc. So every time one of those officials officiates one of those dual exhibition matches, $5.25 more. So I did a double duel 2 seasons ago where they had so many exhibition matches. I made more money off the exhibition matches than I did off of the double duel. And the double duel, I was making $150. I made more than that doing exhibition matches. So that night I walked home with about $350. That was just for one evening of wrestling. So when we do tournaments now, you can see the tournament pay scale is done on an hourly rate. So for middle school, the tournaments, you get paid $22.15 an hour. At the high school varsity level, like when I was working last Saturday, we're getting paid $31.50 per hour. And if we have to officiate more than 8 hours, we get paid overtime and they pay us time and a half. So then the rate goes up to, 45 bucks or whatever. So, um, so you can make some decent money doing this. Officiating last Saturday at Juanita, the tournament went 10 and a half hours. So I made almost $500 officiating on Saturday. So the clock starts on a hourly rate uh, whenever the wrestling is scheduled to begin at the tournament. So let's say the tournament is a 10 a.m. start time. That's when the clock starts, whether they start wrestling or not. So this happens often enough. It happened on Saturday, actually, for the boys' tournament. Like the girls' tournament started on time over there, but the boys' tournament was, for whatever reason, they didn't start it until like 20 minutes past 10. So it was supposed to start at 10 a.m. We didn't start actually wrestling until 10:20, but they were paying us as officials to sit around for those 20 minutes. So clock starts when the wrestling's supposed to start, and then the clock stops when the very last match of the tournament is over. Okay, so in our case, clock started at 10 a.m. The clock stopped at 8:30 p.m. when the last match got contested. So that's how the hourly rate works. In addition to the fee you get for the contest, there's also a travel fee you get. It's $18 for an event. So if I send you to a middle school, you'll get $18 in additional travel pay on top of whatever the $56.50 for the dual meet and whatever $3 per exhibition. So the $18 a flat fee. You get paid that whether you travel one block to the middle school that's a block from your house, or I send you 20 miles across the county to go to some school. $18 in either case. Okay. And it's only one time for the event. So sometimes, like at the high school level, I assign somebody to work both the JV dual meet and then the varsity dual meet. So they only get a travel fee for one of those. They don't get $18 for the JV and then $18 travel for the varsity. They just get one. But I also have cases where sometimes I double up somebody. So this happens where I send somebody to do a middle school dual meet in Issaquah at 3:30, and then they're officiating a high school varsity double duel at 6 p.m. at a high school. So they're getting $18 for travel to the middle school meet, and they're getting another $18 for the travel to the high school site. In Arbiter, there's a game report. So the app has a place where you can file what's called a game report. You report the score in on the event. So you say who home team and visitor team, what the what points each of them scored, because the schools actually use the score report to report their contest results on their own websites and their league standings and stuff. So we put the score in, and then those exhibitions, like I said, if you have exhibition matches, then you can text or email those to me and let me know, hey, I was at Cedar Heights, Bob, and I did 12 exhibition matches. So I can then charge them for that. Okay. If you're on a tournament crew, there will be a head official, and none of you will serve as a head official for any time in the near future. So don't worry about this. But just for your informational purposes, because you might work some middle school tournaments. We have some of those. So there'll be a head official. The head official will communicate to me after the event's over to let me know, yeah, here was the start time, here's when we ended, and then I can make sure to bill the schools appropriately. Okay. So it's their job to communicate to me when the start and end time was for their event. And then if a school cancels the event, they have to do that more than 5 hours in advance of the start time of the event. So, like, let's say it's a 4 p.m. start time for a middle school dual meet. They have to notify us no later than 11 a.m. that day. Otherwise, if they notify us after 11 a.m., they're going to get charged the full dual meet fee, and we're going to pay the official for the dual meet, even though the dual meet's not even happening. So they have a responsibility to let us know in advance far enough. If they don't, the official's getting paid for the event anyway. And then in Arbiter, there's a section of your Arbiter account called Arbiter Pay. So that portion of the app is where the money gets deposited into your account. So they have it set up where the schools that are having the events, they put a bunch of money into an account that Arbiter can electronically draw from. So when they have some event, and I submit the game report from your event, and it's telling them this is how much you're getting billed, school, and then it will automatically transfer the money from that account that they put all the money in into WOA's Arbiter account, and then the WOA can send the money that is due to you, the individual official, into your Arbiter Pay account within 72 hours of that event. So you work a middle school dual meet on Tuesday afternoon, you'll have that money in your Arbiter Pay account by Friday. So you're getting the money as close to real time, hopefully, as we can sort of reasonably expect at the moment. So you'll see the money not too long after you work the event, which is a good thing. Back in the old days, before we had Arbiter, which wasn't really all that long ago, to be honest with you, but we didn't get paid until the end of the season because I had to go send a bill to all of the schools, all 102 schools I work with. I had to send them a bill, and then I had to wait for them to pay. and then send me a check to PNWA so I could deposit that in PNWA's bank account. And then I had to write checks to the almost 100 officials that work for me, individual checks to pay them. And all of that process couldn't take place till the end of the season. And so people didn't get paid till April. They might be working events in November and December and not getting paid till April. Now you're getting paid within 3 days of when you work the event. It's a nice thing. And it's done electronically. So in Arbiter Pay, you the money gets put in there, and then what you have to do is you also have to inside the Arbiter Pay put a reference to whatever bank account you have, whatever financial institution, whether it's Bank of America, Wells Fargo, BECU, whatever. Like you can put references to your bank account so that you can move the money from your Arbiter Pay account electronically into your bank account. So that way the money gets into your wallet ultimately, okay? It's a good deal. Works well. All right, let's talk about uniform requirements. You see us refereeing, so you should be familiar with this. We wear a gray pinstripe shirt. We wear black pants, and if they have belt loops, we wear a black belt. So if we wear a belt, it's black. Black socks, black shoes or wrestling shoes. So for those of you that are doing Spring Apprentice, you can wear your wrestling shoes. And for new officials, even in the fall that join us to officiate the high school season, they can wear wrestling shoes too. Because I don't want people to have to invest money just to. I have a pair of Nike Air Monarchs, all black, that I wear only for officiating. So those things cost $75, but they last me probably 5 years. So, yeah, I have a nice pair of shoes that I wear, but I don't want people to have to go spend 30, 40, 50, $70, $100 on a pair of shoes if they don't want to. So if you have wrestling shoes, you can wear those, okay? You have to have a black whistle with a black lanyard. You have to have armbands, red and green. You have to have some sort of disc to flip to, give choice at the end of the second period or the end of the first period. And then for high school level competition, we have to have a random draw kit. You don't need to worry about that for Spring Apprentice. And here's the good news is that we provide a starter kit for you of all this stuff. Not the pants and the shoes, but the shirt, the bands, the whistle, the lanyard, not the socks, the disc. We provide that all to you. Okay? So you get that stuff so that you can officiate without having to spend the money on that stuff yourself. Okay. And like I said, at the end of the season, then at the end of March, if you turn your gear back in, then we will rebate you $55 at the WOA withheld to pay for those NASO and WOA dues. Okay. There I'll have to write you a check to cover that, but that makes sure we get the equipment back so we can reuse it. If you don't turn it back in, that's why you're not going to get the $55 back because I have to use that money now to go buy that gear again to replace the gear you're keeping. Okay. All right. So again, try to make it so you don't have to put a bunch of money out of your pocket. Hopefully you already have a pair of black pants. You got some black socks. You got your wrestling shoes. Like we'll give you the rest of it. You should be able to officiate. All right. Just going to spin through this quickly just to give you a little familiarization. As referees, right, we have to follow the rules, and the rules are published in the NFHS Wrestling Rules Book. So, some things to know about it. The book gets published yearly because rules do change, so they have to update the book. And the rules book is the definitive source. It is the Bible. So, if it's written in there, that's official. If it isn't written in there and you're trying to pass it off as something that is a rule, like good luck. You shouldn't do that. But when you can point to things from right out of the rules book, that gives you all of the backing and authority that you need. When you open up a rules book, the first page that experienced officials open up is on the inside cover there. It shows you the list of wrestling rule changes. And it's just a very quick summary of them. There's a bigger explanation of the changes later on in the book, but we look at that first because we want to know how much stuff changes this year. And this year in the sport of wrestling, some very significant things changed. Like they made a takedown worth 3, they made a near fall worth 2, 3, or 4 points. They said you only have to have 1 point of contact to continue wrestling inbounds. Like these are some really significant changes. Some years they have almost no changes or something really innocuous. So, but that's where we look. Okay. The table of contents at the start of the book. The wrestling rules book is divided into 11 rules. A rules book, it does not read like a story. So it doesn't, you don't open it up and it goes, Johnny and Michael are wrestling at 144 pounds, and Michael and Johnny shake hands, and then Johnny shoots a double leg takedown. Michael cross faces. Like, it doesn't read like that at all. It's not, those 11 rules cover different sort of aspects of the sport. So you see, rule one there is competition. It talks about, dual meets versus tournaments, matches, etc. Rule two, equipment. It talks about like the mat and the facilities. Rule five, definitions. That's where you find the thing that says what are the different criteria to meet for a near fall? What constitutes a takedown? What is control? What is an escape? So each rule is sort of covering different things. So sometimes I get asked questions by disgruntled fans. Where can I get a rule book? And I will tell them, I could get you a rule book, but I can promise you that you probably won't understand it if I hand it to you. And it's not gonna contain what you're looking for. Probably you're looking for the thing that says, when my son had a single leg elevated and that kid jumped around and did a, sidewinder flip or whatever. Look, if you don't, you're not gonna find something in the rule book that says that. Like, so if you want to officiate, I can teach you to officiate, and you got to study the rules. But if you're just casually looking at this book, it's not going to make much sense to you, probably. So, like I said, 11 primary rules. The key one, really, the most important section, Rule 5, definitions. That's where, again, the bread and butter stuff of what defines a takedown, what defines an escape, what defines near fall, what defines a point of contact, whatever. That's where you find it. So in the rules book, when you open it up, like this is a page for Rule 1, competition. The nomenclature here is when you refer to a rule, the convention is you refer to the rule number and then the section number and the article number. So the rule number you see is Rule 1, competition. That's at the top of the page there. The black boxes you see are the section numbers. Section 1, match. Section 2, dual meet. Section 3, tournament. Okay. And then the article number appears underneath each of those black boxes. So you see ART.1, ART.2, so Article 1, Article 2, etc. So in this case, for rule, section, and article, the things I'm pointing at here would be the things that, and you can have sub-articles. So underneath the articles, they can go as deep as 2A, and it can go 2A1C. Like it can go deep, okay? But what I'm pointing to here is Rule 1-2-2B, okay? And that rule says competition and dual meet shall be conducted by random draw or whatever. Like, so we have that convention. When you get your rules book, you'll see. So I won't go through because you don't have the books in hand right now. But just to give you a sense, like there's a section of the rules book in the back, pages 64 through 83 in this year's rule book, that show you pictures of different things. So you'll know when they refer to a certain rule, sometimes they'll give you an illustration of what to be looking for in that rule. And then there is a chart in the back of the official signals. So there's only a handful of official signals, and you'll have to learn those and use those, okay? All right. The other publication you're going to get issued is what's called the Casebook and Manual. This thing is also published yearly because it's got to keep up with any rule changes. And the first part of the book is called the case book. The case book contains situations, specific situations, and they will give you examples of how the rules apply to that specific situation. Okay. So it's a good way to learn, test yourself on, do you understand the rule well enough when they give you a situation? Do you know how to make the right ruling? If you don't, it tells you what the right ruling is in that situation. The last half of the book from is called the referee's manual, and that's just a section of things that give you some recommended practices, some mechanics for how you operate on the mat so that we can be more standardized as officials. So in the state of Washington, for instance, we've got over 300 people, different people officiating wrestling. And then if you consider the fact that there are 50 states, then you've got thousands of people, tens of thousands of people officiating wrestling across the country. And if we didn't have a reference book like this that says, well, these are the signals, this is how you ought to, where you ought to position yourself, this is how you ought to interpret this, that, and the other, like, you could have a whole lot of randomness if 10,000 people are doing things without being anchored to something that's published. So that's what the referee's manual is trying to make sure that if you're a Washington State wrestler that goes down to Oregon to compete in an event there, that somehow they're not doing some stuff that's so unfamiliar or goofy that it's throwing you off. In the case book, then the the convention with the rule, we said it was rule number dash section number dash article number. When we talk about case situations, we refer to them as rule number dot section number dot article number. Okay, so that's just an FYI for now until you get these publications. I just tell you that's for familiarization. You don't need to memorize anything quite yet. Okay, but this is an example I'm showing you here that shows, like, and I'll just sort of read this one through for you to give you a flavor for it, right? Uh, so this covers Rule 7, and it's talking about illegal holds and maneuvers. So the situation they present: wrestler A lifts the opponent off the mat while wrestler B is in the air struggling to get free. Wrestler A loses control and wrestler B falls to the mat. Would this be considered a slam? So you see, they give you a situation like that where you can sort of picture in your head, okay, one wrestler picks the other up. That wrestler's wiggling around, and then all of a sudden, the wrestler who picked him up like lets him go, and he falls down and hits the mat. Like, is that a slam? Well, the ruling that the case book is showing you is that when you lift your opponent off the mat, you are responsible for a safe return to the mat. If you lose control and wrestler B falls to the mat with unnecessary force, a slam shall be called without hesitation. So it's telling you, yeah, if the wrestler picked the opponent up and then just dropped him and let him fall on the mat from up at 4 feet, 5 feet in the air, that's a slam. So that's an example. The case manual is filled with these kind of things where you can look at a situation and go, do I know how to rule on that? So it's a good way to test yourself on stuff and learn more about how to apply the rules. The case book has almost the power of a rules book, but not quite. The rules are the ultimate authority because a case that you see in the case manual, like, it only applies to that specific situation. The rule applies to 100% of situations. So that's just something to know. Like, you look at something in the case book, you'll see, okay, for that specific situation and how they want you to rule. The problem is that the case book isn't like a million pages long. It doesn't cover every single situation. So the rule does, though. The rule covers every situation. So sometimes you have to be able to apply the rule or interpret the rule into situations that nobody's ever showed you or explained to you before. Okay. And then the referee's manual portion of the case book, like I said, it gives recommendations and tips, but they aren't rule. So they're aligned with the rules and they're good practices, but they're not necessary. It's not absolutely required that you have to do everything by the letter of what the referee's manual says. So, and like I said, the case book helps you to challenge or validate your knowledge of rules. what you're going to find in officiating is all of you that have wrestled, you know 70% of what you need to know to officiate the sport of wrestling. Some of you maybe even have officiated either USA wrestling stuff, or maybe you've helped officiate like, you know, live wrestling or challenge matches or something in your wrestling room. But if you've competed in the sport of wrestling, you already know probably 70% of what you need to know by watching us officiate, by competing in the sport. You know what a takedown looks like, you know what a pin is, etc. But the 30% you don't know is a bunch of stuff that are responsibilities of the referee that you've never had to have or never dealt with. So you don't probably know what happens if weigh-ins at 5 o'clock and 5 o'clock is approaching and one of the four schools at the double duel tonight hasn't shown up yet. Do they lose both their dual meets for the night because they're not here at 5 o'clock? Do we give them some time to arrive? Do we weigh them in separately later? Like what you you don't need to know that as a competitor. You don't really care. As a referee, you need to know and you need to be able to act on it properly. So, there are things that, in our role that we have to be ready for. And so when you get more comfortable in validating the knowledge you have in the sport, it's a lot easier for you to sort of apply the rules. But that's that 30% you probably don't know. And when you study the rules book and study cases or whatever, you start to reduce that 30% down. And as you get experience, it reduces. So at some point, you know, personally, I think I know 100% of it. That doesn't mean I'm perfect, but I do know the rules and I know how to apply them. And I do make mistakes, or sometimes I might look back on my judgment on something and say, if I had that call to make again, I would call it differently. So, but I do know the rules. So my 30% over time went down to zero. But for you that are new, that 30% is a bunch of stuff that the first time you run into some of that stuff, you might get a little nervous or anxious. Don't worry about it. Everybody has to be new at some point. And one of the things that I'll give you as a reassurance is I have personally trained over 300 people how to officiate the sport of wrestling, and they all do a fine job, basically. So the people that are on the call tonight that did it last spring, like they can tell you that after usually by the time they finish the second time they've officiated, they feel comfortable and they feel like they're in their groove. The first time, everybody is nervous. But that second time, and by the end of that second time, it's like, okay, yeah, I can do this. So I can train you up to do this, even though it's a pretty complex sport. The goal in the spring training is not to make you an expert, it's to make you adequate. If you officiate in the fall and start to officiate high school wrestling, then the goal is to get beyond adequate and help you to become better. But for this middle school stuff only, you know, they need officials. It's it's not the World Cup, it's not the World Series, it's not the Super Bowl. Like there is no state tournament for our middle schools. So it's like you can sort of take a little bit of comfort in the fact that like even if you mess something up, it's not like you're ruining someone's career or you're denying them their chance to compete at state or win a state title or something. They don't have such things at stake in the middle school. So that's a comfort to you. Another comfort to you is that, you know, I work with the coaches in our area and they are in partnership with us. So they're not out there trying to grind you down and run you out. They understand that when we have high school students officiating middle school events, that instead of like yelling at you and getting on your case, they need to be part of helping you to improve if there's something you need to improve on or help educate you if there's something you need to be educated on. So instead of like criticizing you and yelling at you, it's more like, hey, you know, can you watch that when he starts running that bar arm that way? I don't want some kid's shoulder to get blown out. You got to be careful when they take it in that direction. Like that's the way they'll approach it, not like, who the hell are you? And yelling at you. Like that's not the way our coaches operate generally. So just take some comfort in that. Um, so, question in the chat is, are we able to wrestle at a tournament and officiate as well? No. We can't have somebody with a conflict of interest like, if you were competing and then you finish and now you step off and put your referee shirt on and step onto another mat, like what happens to the other kids from your competitor schools? Or if one of the kids from your team is on your mat suddenly, like we can't have an official compromise that where they go, "Hey, wait a minute, isn't that one of his teammates?" So yeah, you can't do. You can only play one role at a tournament. You're either an official or you're a competitor. Okay. Okay. And then how do you create an account in Arbiter? So it starts with me creating the account for you, and you'll get an invitation. So once I set up your account, uh, you'll get an invitation, email, a welcome email from Arbiter with a link in it. When you click on that link, it'll take you into Arbiter for the first time, and then you'll fill out other information in your account. So like I only sort of set up the very basic based off of the email address that you want your account to be associated with. And then when you get in there for the first time, under your profile, that's where you put your mailing address, you put your social security number, your birthday, some other stuff that needs to be in there. Okay. So you'll see the instructions on that when I set up your account for the first time. All right. So take heart. Hundreds before you have gone through this, and they've all done a bang up job. And like you saw your peers in the video telling you, like, again, those are people who had not officiated long. They had maybe two events under their belt by the time, 2 or 3 events by the time I was taking those little video snippets of them. They were having a good time. They felt like they could do that job. So let me now cover a few principles of officiating. Again, this is big picture stuff. Um, so take it for what it's worth. The first thing is when I have people come in to officiate, I want them to understand that they are servants and that it's not about them. So I'll bet you all of you have seen colleagues of mine officiating you where you kind of got caught up a little bit in the. I think that referee has kind of an ego. He's yelling at my coach, or he's yelling at me out on the mat, or whatever. Like, or he's making kind of a spectacle of himself, the way he sort of is operating, the way he calls his pin really flamboyantly, or whatever, or the way he thinks he's putting someone in their place. Like, that's not good when you see that kind of behavior. I don't want that kind of an official, actually. So I want people when they enter in to enter in knowing that we enter in because we have some customers to serve. The number one customer is the wrestlers. The number two customers, the coaches and the schools. Like, I want you to understand that, and I want you to be humble about your role and enter in that way, and don't become the kind of official that is on a power kick, right? Or has too big of an ego to admit, oh, you know what? I did screw up that call. You know what? Take the takedown off the scoreboard. Like, they're still neutral. Let's restart. Like, instead of like digging in and going, nope, nope, nope. Like, you gotta understand that it's not about you. It's about the wrestlers that we're serving, okay, and their schools and their fans and their parents. Like that. That's who we're serving. So I want you to enter in the right way. Second principle, especially as you're starting out, you need to know the rules and apply them consistently. There's a progression you'll go through in an officiating career where the first thing you try to do is you just try to know the rules. Like, and you'll know them. Number one, if you competed, you kind of know a bunch of them already, like I said, but you know them by looking at the rules book and reading them, okay? You can progress from there, from like knowing them into memorizing rules. Okay, that's sort of the next progression. Um, and then beyond memorizing, then you start to learn what is the intent of the rule. So the the key here is that like I can memorize something, but just because I memorize it doesn't necessarily mean I understand it. So the next progression beyond memorizing is understanding, like, oh, this is why they're required to wrestle center. is because if I let them wrestle out by the boundary line, they'll keep going out of bounds and the clock will keep stopping, and this sport's not designed for frequent stoppages. That's why they're required to wrestle center. Oh, and that's why it's considered stalling to hang around by the boundary line. Okay, I get it now. Like, so that's the next level of progression. You start to understand the rules. Um, and then higher levels of progression, you start to understand how rules fit together, and ultimately you get to like to be an architect of the sport if you understand it well enough, so that you could actually write rules. And I've got 3 rules that I've put in the National Federation rule book personally. So I'm probably as high as you can sort of actualize as an official in that regard. That I'm capable of writing something like the 9 rules you thought you knew, and having other officials buying that publication or putting rules into the NFHS rule book, right? But for you starting out, the main thing I want you to understand is when you start, it's like apply your rules consistently. So, you know, you don't have to be perfect, but in all sports, the competitors and the coaches, like they can understand that referees, if they're not perfect, at least if they're consistent, they can make adjustments. So if you've ever played baseball and the umpire is letting the ball that is 3 inches off the plate, calling that a strike, if the umpire is going to call it that way for everyone, every inning, you'll adjust. You'll start swinging at that ball 3 inches off the plate instead of grumbling that you just got called for a third strike for a ball that was 2 inches off the plate, when that's the way he's been calling it all game. So you'll just make the adjustments. Same's true in wrestling. If you're, as long as you're applying rules consistently, they will adjust to you. Okay, so that's sort of your initial goal. Start to get to know the rules if you enter into this, and then start to be consistent in the way you apply them. Like if you're slow to give control and award a takedown, be slow every time. Don't be slow one time, really quick the other time. Like that's the kind of stuff that drives people mad. Third principle, you have to see it to call it. Officials cannot call things that they did not personally witness. We should never call a pin until we can see that both shoulders are touching the mat. There's nothing more embarrassing than to see an official call a pin when I can tell they're not looking at both shoulders, because I'm on the other side of the mat and I see like the kid's got one shoulder completely off the mat, and then I see an official like 2 seconds later calling a pin, and then I realize that official is not looking. They just called the pin. They did not get to an angle where they could see both shoulders. So you don't want to make calls on things you don't see. I learned this early in my career when I had a situation where I wasn't watching the wrestlers. I turned my back on them and something happened behind me. One kid took a swing at the other kid, and the coach in the corner is like, "Hey, he just took a swing at my kid." And I turn around real quick and it's too late. Like that had already happened. I couldn't penalize the kid. I didn't see it. What if the coach was lying? Like I don't know. Like because I didn't see it, that's on me. I should have never turned my back on them. But and in that case, actually, the funny ending to that story was I looked at the one kid that got accused and I said, "Did you take a swing at him?" And he nodded his head yes. So then I did penalize him because he admitted it. But if he had said no, I wouldn't have been able to penalize him. So you got to see something to call it. All right. Fourth principle, seek to get it right. This goes back to being humble, right? Like and being a servant. We're not there for ourselves or to be, thought of like that we're perfect or whatever. I want to be thought of as that I'm perfect because I'm making all the right calls. But if I make a mistake, I need to fix it if I can. Sometimes I can't fix a mistake because maybe whatever happened, it's too late and I can't undo whatever I did wrong. But if I have the ability to make it right, then I need to make it right. Okay. And I don't need to set my ego aside and do the right thing for the wrestler. So that if I give a takedown to somebody at the end of a match and that's consequential, and then I realize, oh, they were out of bounds before he got the control. Like, I can't just go, well, I don't want to admit to everybody I was wrong. I guess green wins by a point. No, I have to go, you know what? My mistake. They were out of bounds before he had the control. No takedown. Ah, you know what? Like, red deserves to win this match. Like, I can't cheat that kid. So if we realize we did something wrong, we try to get it right. And there's there's times sometimes when I make a mistake and the first thing that comes out of my mouth after I blow the whistle, realizing I shouldn't have blown the whistle and stopped something, is to look at the coach in the corner and go, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. Like, I stopped that prematurely, you know? So we just seek to get it right. Last principle, use your common sense and discretion. Like I said, the rules book isn't a million pages long. It's like 90 pages long. So there's a trillion situations in wrestling. It can't cover everything. So there's a lot of sort of white space you have to read into and apply rules into. So you know what? I understand in my 35 years of officiating, your common sense will probably make the right decision like 95% of the time. Like, if you don't know what the rule is, but you use common sense, I bet your common sense will match the rule 95% of the time because you'll go, well, what should I do here? Use your common sense and you're probably going to make the right call anyway. But not everything is described in the case book. There aren't all the situations. Not everything's described in the rules either. So if you run into something that you're kind of thinking to yourself, oh, I can't think of a rule that covers this or a case that is this specific situation, you just use your common sense. So give the example back to the example I gave of we got a double duel that night, three schools are here, one's not. Geez, it's like 10 minutes before weigh-in starting, and I'm asking the home coach, like, have you heard from that school yet? Like, no, I haven't. Like, do you have the coach's phone number? No, I don't. Like, okay, crap. All right, common sense. Like, uh, common sense isn't, well, they're eliminated if they're not here at 5 o'clock. It's like, hey, it's 5 minutes till now, coach. Coaches, do you want to delay weigh in, give them 15 more minutes, or do you want to agree to waive the requirement for shoulder to shoulder weigh ins and let them weigh in separately? I'll weigh in these three teams now, and then they get to weigh in when they arrive. Like, we use common sense. And then the common sense is, yeah, let's let's delay weigh in for 10 more minutes and give them a chance to get here. And if they're not here, then yes, Bob, can we go ahead and just weigh in the teams we'll weigh in one team at a time and let them weigh in be the fourth team to weigh in once they arrive. Like, just use our common sense and do the right thing. Okay. So that's what I want to cover tonight. My goal again is to give you enough of an overview. Like, we didn't get into like trying to make calls on, do you think this is a takedown? Do you think that's a pin? Like, that's not what tonight's session's about. Tonight's a session so you can go, gee, that the way that works, do I like that? Can I be at a school at 3:45 because we don't get out until 2:30 or whatever? Do I think that's is that pay enough for me to want to do this? Am I ready to step up to those kind of responsibilities? Like, that's all the stuff I'm trying to equip you with so you can make your decision, okay? So I'll pause now, and are there questions? If you want to post it in the chat, I'm looking at the chat right now as well. So I see somebody's posting something. Will I send all of you links that you will need to be a ref to go on? Yes. So everyone, I'm going to send out after this session. I'm going to send you an email. In the email, I will include a link to the video replay of this session so that if there's somebody who was on the invite list that didn't make it for some reason tonight, they have a chance they can watch this replay. Um, this certification is not the same for USA Wrestling, so this is completely separate from that. But to continue what I was saying, I will send out an email with a link to this video for replay. There will also be links for a set of other things. One will be for your Arbiter account so that you and instructions for how you register. So Arbiter will send you a welcome email to anyone that ends up saying yes to this that I put in there. And then when you click on that link, it'll take you to Arbiter. But you have to take a separate step to click on a separate link I'll send you later that is registers you within Arbiter so that then your account gets fully activated. So, but the email I'll send you will have this video replay. It'll have a set of homework prior to our session 2, which is on Sunday, December 29th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Juanita High School. We'll get on the mat. We will do some coverage of some key rules, and then you will get a chance to do some hands-on officiating in that session. Now, the reason I'm doing this training this early while your season is still underway is because you'll get a taste of it on Sunday, and then you may go, "Oh crap! Like I'm not sure I'm really ready." That's okay. We'll have a refresher training when we get towards the end of your season, closer to when it's time for you to officiate. But if I wait until after your season ended to start all this training, we would have a very compressed time frame, and then you might be really, really nervous knowing that, geez, I'm supposed to officiate next week. I just got my first chance to do this. I'm not sure I'm ready. Like this is going to give everybody a chance who needs extra, time on the mat. We can give that to you if I get you trained up now. Okay. So the homework prior to that session, though, there's almost an hour of training video modules I'm going to give you that I want you to watch before we get to that second session on Sunday. So all that will come in the follow-up email to this session. So you'll do that homework, and then those that either continue on will show up on Sunday at Juanita High School, and we'll do the hands-on training. Okay. Now, when will we be able to start? Gabe, when you ask that question, you mean start officiating? If that's your question, you'll be able to start officiating um, in late February, mid to late February, depending on what happens. Now, to be honest with you, like in an extreme sense, like you could even start officiating during the high school season if you were like. I have a guy that just graduated from Skyline High School in June. He officiated the last 2 years high school varsity for us because he had suffered some concussions and he decided at the start of going into his junior year season that he wasn't going to wrestle anymore. So he came and trained with us and became an official. And he officiated high school varsity stuff as a junior and senior in high school. He worked regional tournaments the last 2 years, state qualifiers to the Mat Classic. He's down at the University of Arizona now, officiating in the state of Arizona. He's home right now officiating for us while he's on break. But he was a high school student officiating high school wrestling and officiating league tournaments and regional tournaments. So in some cases that has happened on he's the third person I've had do that where he was still in high school himself and he decided to officiate instead of wrestling. Or I've had guys before temporarily officiate while they're still competing in high school because I had a guy last year, he got injured in the first tournament and he had officiated for us already 2 spring seasons. And so he was going to have to sit out for a week. And I needed an official for a tournament that weekend to run a JV mat. He got himself certified and he officiated, made a couple $100 that Saturday. Then he went back to competing the next the next week. And then this past weekend again, I had several high school wrestlers from Woodinville who officiated with us last spring. They got their certification done last week, and they officiated on Saturday, made a couple $100 officiating the JV tournament that Woodinville was hosting. So it could be that people do also have the chance to officiate during the season, but that's kind of a rare, kind of exceptional thing. Otherwise, for the middle school stuff, it'll start in mid February in some leagues. All leagues will be competing in the month of March. Other questions? He's got something in the chat. Okay, when do we have other meetings? Also, will the meetings be online or in person? So the next meeting we have is the training session at Juanita High School on Sunday at 11 a.m. That won't be online. I cannot train someone how to officiate in a hands-on fashion if they are not physically in the room, and I can put them on the whistle and have them move around and do things. So for a session like this, I do it online because we don't need to be in the same place for me to share this information with you. But for me to be able to train you how to position yourself, to observe you, to have you blowing the whistle for some wrestling action, that has to happen in person. All right, I get another question coming in. If I have to work that day, is there an alternative training? There will be an alternative training, but it won't take place until after the high school season is drawing to a close or done. So again, this will put this will compress the time frame for anyone that goes through that progression. So yes, it's possible beyond Sunday to do that training, but it probably won't happen for another month or more after that. So I'm trying to spare people a lot of anxiety by giving them the chance to train up earlier. Any other questions? Am I on the naughty list or the nice list? I can't answer that question. No, nobody asked that. Hopefully, you're all on the nice list. All right. Well, if there aren't any other questions, then first thing I'm going to do as a follow up is I'm going to send an email back out to everyone first to ask like who wants to move forward. Those that send me a reply back to say yes, then I will send them the links that I talked about in the homework. Okay. I want to know like who's coming on Sunday, who's wants to go, or for someone like Gabe's Garnett is saying, "Hey, I want to do this, but I might not be able to make Sunday." So if that's true, I want to know who those people are so that maybe there's just some number of them that I'm going to go, okay, can't be there Sunday, but I know they want to do it, so great, they stay on the list. Versus those that I will find out, okay, they don't want to do that. I can drop them off the list and not worry about communicating with them or expecting them to show up to something. Okay. So I'll send that out to everybody tonight and uh, ask for people to respond back by end of day tomorrow. And then I'll send for those that do say yes, I'll just send out the links to them and they can get started on their homework. So if there's nothing else, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. I look forward to meeting some of you in person that I haven't met before, or maybe I've met you because I've officiated you on a mat and I just didn't remember or know your name, but I look forward to being able to meet with a bunch of you on Sunday, okay? And for that training on Sunday, like come dressed in some clothes like that you could potentially roll around on the mat on. I may need to use some of you to be sort of like wrestlers for someone else who will be on the whistle. Okay, so come in some gear that you could like roll around in, like shorts or sweats or something. I will issue out the kits as well on Sunday to those that go through the training. I'll give you your kit with the shirt, the bands, the whistle, etc. So you'll have that stuff so that when I put you on the whistle and say, okay, it's your turn to officiate, you'll be able to put your gear on and be ready to go. Okay. All right. So I'll be in touch with all of you. Thanks so much for giving me this 2 hours. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you being interested in this and wanting to potentially be a part of helping to pass the sport on to others. Like it's the greatest sport in the world. I've been proud to be a part of it for half a century now, and I'm proud to hopefully pull some of you in to be people that are going to do the same thing. Some of you may be teaching others to officiate wrestling 20 years from now, hopefully. Okay. So enjoy your holidays. I'll be in touch with all of you. Okay. Good night.